let's talk about some of the countries digital nomads are moving to and why they're choosing these places. We're also going to talk about some mid to long-term visa options. First up, we have the Philippines. The Philippines is a great country, not only for retirees who are looking to get a lot more out of life by spending less, but also for digital nomads who seek the tropical lifestyle. What's remarkable about the Philippines is, of course, the tropical beaches and the overall beach lifestyle that you can have in the Philippines. And that is something that's very unique about this country. And I think the reason why a lot of foreigners actually choose the Philippines is because the government offers a really liberal visa policy. That applies to tourist visa and residence visa as well. Now, if you come to the Philippines as a tourist and you don't want to get too involved, maybe you just want to try out the country to see if it is the right fit for you, then you can just fly in on a tourist visa. You don't need to apply for the tourist visa in advance before going to the Philippines. You don't need to do that, and you get 30 days and you can extend this visa for up to 36 months. Now, it needs to be extended in increments, meaning you have to go to the immigration office every couple of months to renew your visa and pay the necessary renewal fees. If you do end up staying in the Philippines for 36 months and you leave the country, you want to come back in, you do need some clearance from the Philippines in order to get back into the country because you spend so much time there. That's a really good option, and I do advise that before you actually get the retirement visa, and we're going to talk about this right now actually. In the event that you have a low income of say just $800, $900, $1,000 a month, you can actually qualify for this retirement visa with an additional deposit of $10,000. And the good part is really that this is a long-term visa. Unlike most other Southeast Asian countries that have a ton of contingencies and a ton of financial requirements to get some kind of a long-term visa, the Philippines makes it rather easy for foreigners looking to retire in the tropical paradise. So I do want to praise the Philippines for its liberal visa policy and the fact that the government did not change the visa policy during or after the pandemic. So that's applaudable. The Philippines is a great country because the barrier of entry is quite low. Now you may ask, what are some of the cons of living in the Philippines, because they exist everywhere? In case you're already a bit older, obviously you want to make sure that you are in a place or country where you have access to reliable healthcare. And there's no question that the reliability of healthcare is not present in all parts of the Philippines. You have good hospitals in Manila, you do have hospitals in Cebu, but if you end up in a more remote location, you may have some difficulties obtaining reliable healthcare. Of course, that's very important for retirees. But also in the event that you should have an accident, healthcare should never be neglected. So that's something to consider as one of the cons. Another con is, of course, the internet connection. It's not as good, not as reliable as it is in other Southeast Asian countries. Why is that? Well, the Philippines is a pretty remote location. Generally speaking, islands have internet problems across the globe, so not just the Philippines. Before we move on here, something I actually almost forgot to add is that for the retirement visa, the Philippines has a special offer in place for retired veterans. So it's going to be a much smaller deposit. Now, if you're a retiree with no income at all, you can also qualify if you deposit $20,000 into a Filipino bank account. Next up, we have Mexico. What's great about Mexico is that it is a really diverse country, very possibly the most diverse country that we're going to discuss in today's video. What's really important is, of course, the cost of living, which is really low in most parts of Mexico. Now, Mexico's Caribbean can be a lot more expensive, especially if you get there during peak season, which typically starts in November and ends in February or March. So if you get to the Caribbean side, then you definitely can expect to pay a lot more for rent and just everyday things. Mexico's west coast is also not so cheap because of the mass influx of American, Canadian tourists and retirees, or just people working in Mexico. Home prices have gone up by a lot. Now, the cost of living is still cheap, especially when it comes to food, when it comes to dining out, when it comes to services. Mexico is a great place for that. And what I really like about Mexico is, again, its diversity. So you have tropical climate on the Caribbean side, you have also tropical climate on the west coast, and then of course in central Mexico you have more seasons, or I shouldn't say more seasons, but the weather is just a lot cooler, it's much cooler climate, and it can actually get pretty cold at night, but it doesn't take too long for it to heat up again. Central Mexico is actually quite diverse in terms of ethnicity groups. It's quite diverse in terms of food. And it's beautiful if you want to live in a place where you don't have to sweat all day long. I think the climate in central Mexico is a lot more bearable for a Western person than Mexico's Caribbean. That's just my personal opinion. And the question is now, what options do you have for the visas? Now, if you want to live in Mexico for the long term, you can apply for a temporary residence permit, which is usually done at the consulate in your home country, in your home city. There are certain requirements. There is a minimum saving requirements of roughly $35,000. Or if you want to get a permanent residence card for Mexico, you can also get that. But again, you need a lot more savings. Temporary residence is issued for 1 year initially and can be extended for another 3 years, totaling up to 4 years. If you want to get permanent residency in Mexico, then you would need savings of at least, I think, $120,000. That amount changes all the time, so don't take my word here. It's roughly $120,000, I believe, give or take. And yeah, you can also qualify for income if you have that. Now, if you want to make an investment into Mexican real estate, then there would be another option to secure a long-term visa to live in the country. Thailand is one of the most popular tourist destinations in the entire world. Retirees, digital nomads have been choosing Thailand for a very long time. Thailand is interesting because, again, it is located in Southeast Asia. It offers the cheap cost of living. Generally speaking, the people are very friendly, especially to tourists. Internet connection is great in Thailand. It's definitely a digital nomad hub, also a retiree hub. So shouldn't be a big deal, shouldn't be too difficult to make friends with other foreigners there because there is just a huge amount of them. If you want to come to Thailand as a tourist, then you get 30 days and that visa can be extended for another 30 days in the country. In case you put in the effort to get a 6-month visa before coming to Thailand, meaning you actually went to the consulate or embassy in your home country and applied for a 6-month tourist visa there, that would be a great way for you to remain in Southeast Asia for actually longer than 6 months, because you can actually leave Thailand every 60 days, go to a different Southeast Asian country, come back into the country and be issued another 60 days. Now, you can only do that 3 times. You get 60 and 60 and 60, so totaling 180 days. Now, if you want to commit more to Thailand, you might consider the Thai Elite visa, which is a little bit expensive for the average person. It costs roughly $18,000 at this moment in time, give or take. There's also the 20-year Thai Elite visa, which costs roughly $32,000, $33,000. That's another option. That's for 20 years. If you want to bring dependents with you to Thailand, then there's an additional fee due for that. Thailand has many other visas, including the Thai Smart visas. Thailand also launched a 10-year visa with the intention to attract high net worth individuals or just people with a good high income, if you will. In case you want to come to Thailand as an investor or a professional, there are several visas available in the Thai Smart visa categories. Panama is an interesting place because it has a lot going for it in terms of ease to enter. A lot of countries that we're talking about in today's video, they don't make it so easy for you to become a resident or citizen, something that is not so difficult to achieve in Panama. Panama offers the Friendly Nations visa, and the Friendly Nations visa is available to citizens of over 50 countries. So if you're lucky enough to have a passport from one of the countries that are on that list, then you can actually become a resident of Panama without committing a whole lot of money. I mean, there are options in place. If you want to buy real estate and qualify for this way, then what you can do is buy real estate worth at least $200,000. Another option would be to deposit $200,000 into a fixed deposit account. That's again the minimum amount. It can be more, but it cannot be less, and that would also be enough to get that visa. One of the more common ways for young people, for younger entrepreneurs, for digital nomads, or just people, expats who want to live in Panama for the long term to actually get this visa is by starting a company and employing themselves. That's the most popular, the most common option used by foreigners migrating to Panama. And all that's required here is really just to open up a company and create a formal employment contract for you. And with that, you can get also a residence permit for Panama. Now, Panama is not the most diverse country at all. It is, pretty humid and hot. It's not so diverse. It's a pretty small country. I think roughly 4 million people live in Panama at this point in time. That's a decision that you have to make. Unlike Mexico, a country that's very diverse, Panama is all about tropical beaches. Malaysia has long been one of the more popular tourist destinations in Asia. What's interesting about Malaysia is, of course, the amount of visas available to not only expats, retirees, but now also digital nomads. So Malaysia is now launching a digital nomad visa, and the requirements are as follows. You need to have an income of at least $24,000 per year, so $2,000 plus a month. Digital nomad visas are usually issued anywhere from 6 to 24 months. Malaysia's digital nomad visa is valid for just 12 months, but it can be renewed for an additional 12 months, totaling 24 months. This isn't really a residence permit by any means, because you're not a resident of the country, you cannot become a citizen, you cannot buy land with this visa, you would need to go with the Malaysia My Second Home program. But again, if you are a digital nomad and you don't want to commit too much to a country, then the Malaysia digital nomad visa may just be the right fit for you. You can bring your dependents. You're going to pay roughly 1,000 ringgit in fees for yourself. That's the processing fee that you're going to pay, and roughly 500 ringgit for each dependent that you bring with you. Malaysia is a very diverse country. Most expats settle down in West Malaysia. So that's where you have Kuala Lumpur, Penang, Johor Bahru, right? So those are the more popular destinations for digital nomads and expats. But there's also East Malaysia, which a lot of people don't talk about because they've never been there. And a lot of them don't even know that it actually exists. East Malaysia is located on the island of Borneo. And it's actually a very popular place for a lot of people now because it's cheaper. There's a better visa option in place with the Sarawak Malaysia My Second Home program. Generally speaking, Malaysians are very friendly. It's a very diverse country. There's more ethnicity groups in Malaysia. There is the Malays, there's the Chinese, the Indians, the Ibans, the Bidayus. So it's a mixed bag. It's a very diverse country. Last but not least, we have the Dominican Republic. What's interesting about the Caribbean island is that you can fly there on a tourist visa, overstay your tourist visa, and just pay a penalty fee upon departure. They call it an overstay fee. That's pretty cool because there's really not a whole lot of countries that we know of that actually offer this kind of option. Usually if you overstay, you get deported and you can never enter the country again. Now that may not necessarily be the case in the Dominican Republic. If you overstayed for a year, you would pay roughly $100 fine to the government. Now if you overstayed a couple of years, the fine may be $300 to $500. If it's 10 years, you're looking at probably $1,000 to $2,500 in overstay fees. I'm not encouraging you to go to the Dominican Republic to overstay. I'm not encouraging you to do that at all, but I'm just saying that it is an option and the government offers that. So the government actually has the announcement in the airports in the Dominican Republic that you can actually overstay pretty much legally and just pay a fine upon departure. If you want to live in the Dominican Republic for the long term, then what you can do is you can purchase real estate worth at least $200,000. The Dominican Republic, very similar to Panama, is not so diverse, is not as diverse as Mexico, and it is a Caribbean island, so the weather is tropical for most throughout the year. It's an island for people with, a lower income. Retirees obviously love the Dominican Republic because they want to get out of the bad weather. They want to, enjoy the low cost of living. I definitely say that the Dominican Republic is one of the most liberal countries of this very planet. Which of the discussed countries do you like the most? And are there any other countries that we could potentially discuss in a future video? Leave a comment below and let us know. Consider subscribing if you haven't already. I'm uploading new videos on digital nomad locations, travel updates, and investment advice several times a week right now. And if you got some more time left, check out these videos.